So in everybody's mind, they always have, and I don't know how this got to be this way, that summer is where the highs are.
Hey, welcome to Hedge Heads, where we discuss the commodity markets, hedging, and anything related to trading futures. Remember, the risk of loss in trading commodity interests can be substantial. These are opinions only and not trading advice. Well, no one knows where the market's going. We're not afraid to share some ideas. I'm Ryan Tunkseth. He's John Prishman. Well, John, it is that time of year. We have Juneteenth this week, so just a reminder that markets are closed tomorrow. We're recording this on Tuesday the 18th, whenever you choose to listen to it, I guess. Markets might not be closed tomorrow. But it's a very interesting seasonal time of year, and we got a lot going on this year, too. It's there's plenty of bull cases attempting to be made, but seasonally, we're more in a bearish time, aren't we?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty black and white. The markets don't have a good history of going up after this date. You have the drought of 2012. But it's not that. It's that what people think this time of year is they think that the one last rally is coming, or it comes off the highs and I will wait for the next rally. And it's a really unforgiving time of year. Generally, when it goes down this time of year, it's finished. You'll get some separation of beans and corn, where corn likes to see the forecast into pollination. So you're gonna find volatility all the way through the 4th of July sometimes. Last year, I think we topped out. Oh boy, we were fishing in Grand Rapids, and I remember the day it topped out. It was the 22nd, 23rd, maybe.
Yeah, 22nd, I think, was that Friday.
Yeah. And the year before, it was June 19th or 18th, somewhere in there. And then the previous 2 years, it was May. So in everybody's mind, they always have, and I don't know how this got to be this way, that summer is where the highs are. They're always in this, and it's not true at all. You'll find a lot of years where that's not the case. You'll find a lot of years where you'll find lows in corn in June. Not a lot of years, but you'll be at 340, 350 in the past, where you'll see years like that it can rally through the rest of the summer because it's already so low. We're at kind of a weird price in corn at 460 something. So there's no reason to move it down sharply this time of year before pollination, but at the same time, those seasonals, go ahead and check them out in corn. You don't have to listen to me. Just go look and see what they look like. It's a sheer cliff. It's just straight down. And so we're approaching that. We have about one more week before that's here, or another few trading days. But it's a time of year where guys get all these false hopes. They get on their phone or their computer and they just read. And if you look at any given year, you're going to find flooded fields. You're going to find unplanted fields. You're going to find a lot of scary stories on Facebook. That goes without saying. Like, just look at this field, look at this tractor. You shouldn't have parked there. I just saw a cedar sitting, under 2 feet of water. And you're going to see this every year. And last year it was the dryness. A lot of ugly pictures. And it's a very easy time of year to convince yourself not to do anything and just wait and see. And it's the worst mistake that you can make. Now, I'm not saying go out there and sell everything at all. It's not a recommendation. It's just don't ignore these seasonals. They usually get ignored. And it's always some excuse not to market. Like I was just talking about the pictures. Oh, I heard so-and-so, my cousin drove from, Davenport all the way to Peoria, Illinois, and it's the worst crop I've ever seen. That's this time of year. You're going to hear every single story you think you can hear, I hear every year. So when you get large groups of people saying it in a lot of different regions, then you actually have something. Is that occurring this year? No, I'd say the worst spots are Minnesota. We're right where it's been terrible, and it's raining as we speak right now. And then I think a little west of us hasn't been getting, a little south has been plenty wet. And then you talk to the guys in Illinois, now they need rain, and you got a warmer and drier forecast. So if it's going to rally, it's going to be on the warmer and drier forecast for Illinois, and then it won't matter what the forecast is pretty soon for corn if the pollination's anywhere near, ideal. What makes corn tricky this year is we don't know what the acreage is going to be in the next report, I think on the 28th. and we don't know. We never went to a high price that crashed down to a low price. We were always this medium-ish price. That wasn't good. It wasn't bad. 475 for the last 6 months in corn. Not a lot of opportunity. So people feel like you don't need to do anything because it's been this price forever. But this is a nasty time of year for prices as we move towards the end of the month. And the biggest hurdle, I think, is going to be for soybeans in that report, trying to avoid the bear story. I don't know how they're going to do it. That can be a particularly nasty report for soybeans. This last year was a wonderful report with very low acreage, and then you had almost no ending stocks and hardly any ending stocks predicted. So last June was a different story for beans. I think it was near limit up, where corn had 94 million acres, and it was really bearish. So you had a lot of volatility this time of year, a lot of volatility going on. Very tricky top last year. It went up right in the seasonal window when it should go up, and then fell right when it should have fallen. Now, the rains didn't come for another, week and a half, almost 2 weeks after we saw the top. But they had it forecasted out there, and they sold it off well before the rain came. So back to why this is a hard and tricky time of year. It always looks like the year that it's going to be different. It just looks like last year had that look. I know the seasonal, but it doesn't mean it has to happen every year, and that's correct. But the last year really looked like it was going to be that year, and it was right on schedule. Almost to the day that it should have topped out, it topped out, and then it ended up being a record crop for corn. So that's the trickiness of this time of year, and one of the harder times of the year to trade. But if you do get on the right side, it's one of the better times.
I did look, I pulled seasonals for oats and soybeans today for a client. And if you want to buy beans, you should have bought them before the close today, and you have until Thursday because the market's closed.
Yeah, there's a little bit of runway left, and it can do a lot of damage in that little period of time. So you don't want to put your bear hat on too early either.
But I will say, and I get the argument, if you compare today's price, this year's price, compared to the 5 and 10 year average, we are way down. We've already gone off the cliff, especially in beans, but it was true in oats too. I pulled the seasonal in oats too. But the seasonals do not look good after the 21st or 22nd, not until fall.
Yeah, October 1st is a great seasonal low for beans. I find that it's selling off earlier is worse news than better news. And this is where trading is interpretive. One guy's going to see that and say, "Hey, we did something we shouldn't have done and sold off way before we should have." And then I'm going to say there's a reason why I sold off, because the weather was really good, and it sold off earlier than normal because they weren't worried about the crop. Now, that will trigger a lot of arguments about how good the crop is, and it gets to be really personal. Like one guy is going to have a really bad field, but as a whole, the market's seeing no threat. And with the poor demand that we've been seeing all right demand in corn, just enough to keep it afloat. But with the poor demand, it's an easy sell for the funds. And then you're going to get, the funds don't know what they're doing. There's, we don't have any left over. And people just seem to really fight this time of year, and they just fight what they know is right. And then they get busy. Like, this is one of the busier times of year. So it makes it really easy to ignore. And then, about a month from now, what happened to this market? You can't believe it happened. It just seems to happen year in, year out. You see it, you try to prevent it from happening. And then you always get a little glimmer of hope. Like, we got that warm and dry east right now, and it's going to be cooler and wet in the west. But you'll say, hey, I'm just going to wait a few more days, see if this gets warmer and drier, and then we might get something going. And then meanwhile, the market starts melting down and then nothing gets done. And then you say to yourself, well, I'll wait for the next bounce, and then I'm going to pull the trigger on everything. And then there's not a bounce. So it's a really punishing time of year if you're indecisive. But it also can be punishing in the way where if you were early by 2 or 3 days last year, which I was in a bear spread, it'll be very painful for you too. So you can make an argument on both sides. It's a very tricky time of year, but my point is, don't ignore what happens 90% of the time. And that's what a lot of guys do. This is going to be the different year. I'm just going to see what the summer weather holds. I'll sell my old crop then, and hopefully it's a higher price, and I'll see what's going on with new crop. That tends to be a very bad mistake. 2012, we topped out on August 14th, and I cannot remember another year that we were high priced, that we stayed up past July 8th or 9th. I'm sure there might be one, but it gets to be this window where they want to see the weather for pollination and corn, and if it looks non-threatening, then they sell it off, and they often sell it off even if it is threatening.
Yeah, I do have a sheet, actually. Our intern's working on it now, but since 1980, tracking the lows and highs for the quarters, and there's not often a summer high. There is, you talked about the seasonal in October. Beans, the actual high for the contract usually does end up sometime in October.
Yep.
So you do have if you did miss this window, you may get an opportunity, but you're way into harvest by the time that high might hit.
Beans have been more forgiving than corn for catching the high this time of year, where it can get warm and dry in August and they can come back. And there's been a couple of years where the corn crop's been really good and the bean crop's been terrible. Pretty rare when that happens. They tend to move together. The biggest hurdle is going to be the end of the month report for soybeans. And then it's going to have to be, if it's a bearish report like it kind of looks like it's going to be, then it's going to have to be a really threatening weather for this to rally. Funds are short. It looks like they want to be short. And they briefly covered their shorts, I think April into May, right after I got on my bean bull spreads, of course. Why they waited months and months. Then they saw I was clear and out, and everybody was mad at me. And then, of course, they covered every day after that. But they only got to really a neutral position, and then they were more than happy to add a couple weeks ago to all their short positions. So these guys are very confident this is going to be a big crop, but that's what makes a market. They're betting on that, and the farmer's betting on waiting, just judging by the phones. I'm not hearing any concern. It's been this price for a long time, and I just feel like these guys are just going to wait and see what happens. There's just not a lot of enthusiasm or interest in this market. Real complacent, and these prices can't drop. It's already too cheap, that kind of talk. But this can be a very bad time of year, especially if there's a lot of rain in the forecast. We don't know what's going to happen, so keep an open mind for the next week. But it tends to be one of the most important weeks of the year, and it often gets ignored.
I would say it's hard. It's been a tough market this year because it is so far down.
Yep.
Already, like especially on the soybean side. When I pulled the seasonal on oats, we're way under the 5 and 10 year average for now. Like, how much lower can it go? And that's where I think some of the, call it apathy or the wait and see or the let's see what happens. But I can't help but think, like, if beans do move 70 cents down, like, what are you going to do then?
It's gonna get the wheat corn or the bean corn ratio out of whack, and then it'll favor more corn acres and less bean acres, and that's the market's job. It needs to fix the supply problem that we built. It's hard to believe we built a supply problem on the few acres that we planted last year, but that's a sign that South America production is just taking our exports more and more every year. We have the biodiesel stuff that everybody keeps talking about. I see no evidence of anything but plants opening. We're in an area where we're probably going to see better basis because of these plants, but I just haven't seen any signs that it's made any difference yet. I think they have big plans for 2025 on the biodiesel front, but it is politics and that stuff changes pretty quick. So, when it shows up, and it's supposed to be extremely positive for the bean price, but we're maybe another year away from that. I don't know. What have you heard?
Yeah, well, I'm going to jump on your South America side for a second and just say I think that the threat of South America is being severely underestimated right now on how many acres they're adding and the growth on that side. Yeah. And I don't think it's just grain. We can finish this topic, but if you want to, I was just reading an article now on cattle, and that Argentina is now the second largest slaughter to China.
Yep.
And they're moving. They're not afraid to export, and they're not afraid to price to export out of South America.
Yeah, and their U.S. is importing a lot of beef tallow. That's making a big comeback, which is going to be just the render fat. And it's used for cooking. People are shying away from the oil seeds. The younger generations hear this talk, and they want to go back to the natural stuff, which would be beef tallow. I believe that's what McDonald's French fries were fried in for many years, and then it changed in the '80s maybe. But then it fell out of favor, and now that's going to be one of the big U.S. imports is going to be all that beef tallow because they do process so many cattle there, and there's getting to be a big resurgence for that tallow. So a lot of interesting exports out of South America, going to be huge competitors to us. They're unfortunately able to produce it for a price under what we're able to produce it for. So that's where the pain comes from. The guys want a better price here because it costs this much to plant it. But the problem is your competitor that's selling it is selling it cheaper. And, it gets to be like what happened to the wheat market. We get to be a secondary, a third, maybe third or a distant fourth market. So it's happening for sure in the South American production. They have a lot more acreage that they can put in production. It's not rainforest they're cutting down, it's pasture land. So they can till it up and put it right in production. I think they have 10 million more acres coming in over the next number of years, like 3 or 4 years, depending on the price and how fast it comes into production. But that's not a problem that's going to go away from us. And it's going to be talked about a lot this winter, I think, especially if we have a good crop and the prices fall. We're going to be talking a lot more about the South America, the production and the huge ramp up that they've seen and the huge export slice that they're taking now.
Would you be worried as a cattle producer too from South America, or is it mostly grain that you're looking at, or what should you be? We haven't talked cattle in a while, and I know seasonally this is more the grain time.
Oh yeah, no, cattle's been kind of boring, and recently it surged up, and now we're back up towards those old highs, and it's triggering definitely phone calls. I have a number of guys that need to hedge or sell by August, and they're the gap's getting to be small. It would be nice not to have to hedge if a market's coming up, but at the same time, we're getting to prices where it's struggled, especially in the feeder cattle, on the feeder cattle side. So yeah, it's a 2-year-old bull market. The USDA said that the placements were really low this spring, which makes the fall on back very bullish. So they got that they're kind of hanging on to, and you have premiums in the back end. Now we're getting up to prices where last year it started sputtering too. We're a little shy of that, and the front's definitely not running as hot as it ran last year in live cattle. Weights are up. Things are a little bit different, but it feels like this final push to where we're going right now, and it gets to be, what should I pay for this calf, and what's an insane price? In a game of musical chairs. It's fine if you pay that price and you get out of the game fast enough, but if you pay that price and then you don't get off the ride, that's where the losses come in cattle. So it just kind of feels like this frenzied end to a multi-year bull market, and that'll probably be a very controversial opinion, but cattle tends to disappoint. Like they'll say it'll be a multi-year bull market, and it usually doesn't even last a year. This one's gone on 2 years. And like you say, are they going to import a bunch of beef? They will if it gets cheap enough. And there's laws that you have and that they've tried to fix these loopholes and all this stuff. But do you still have Mexican cattle coming in? I'm sure you do. And there's all this stuff where they import relabel, or import feed for a little in the U.S. and then get by the laws that way. There's going to be plenty of that. The Packers are going to want their margin back, and it's gone on for a long time. You have the bird flu stuff, and it just has got a different feel to it. But I've thought for a long time that it's going to kind of have one more big push in this. What was it, last Thursday when it gapped up and went, or last Friday? That was a really good looking day, and then it didn't fall apart yesterday. Today it was kind of down a little bit, but still, it's still got a little gas in the tank, it looks like, for cattle for sure.
What is the seasonal side of cattle? I mean, are we normally...
Oh, yeah, is one that you shouldn't ignore. There's for hedgers, I have recommendations coming up, but there's a very, very good window for cattle coming up over the next month. It does not mean don't market, because I'm talking about live cattle. I'm not even talking about feeders. But starting next week is a very, very strong seasonal week, or a month for cattle. So in about 3 or 4 trading days from now, that's when it begins. But it doesn't mean it's going to happen this year. It's just, you want to know your seasonals, and it definitely favors the bulls at a time of year when it normally goes up anyway. The market's looking pretty good. And, you look at the charts, they look good too. They look healthy right now. But I am very cautious that I'm getting ready for a number of hedges that need to be put on here before August.
Sure. Let's talk briefly about the big USDA report coming at the end of the month here. Do you have any thoughts or pictures, or what is that something you want to be hedged prior to that? I know we've talked seasonal. We've mentioned the 20, 21st, 22nd dates as being a seasonal opportunities to start looking at stuff. What do we want to do with that report?
These markets are perfect example of markets where it could go either direction, and then you'd want to use option strategies that favor that. So you're buying volatility, especially with the volatility being as low as it is going into this report. You're looking to buy volatility, in a report that has a lot of fireworks usually behind it. Strangles, straddles. I mean, you call us and we'll get you into more details of what we should be looking at before this report. Historically, it's a disappointment to the bulls because I think what happens is people look out their window and maybe things are a little yellow or it's starting off slow in your region, and they can't believe the USDA says what they say. But one of the rare times I'm sticking up for the USDA here is we don't know what the plant's going to do. You shouldn't be making big changes. And if you have your crop conditions really high, the highest since 2018, I just don't see big revisions down in yield or anything else. But there's a lot of categories that can surprise. You have so many different things going on there. Usually what it is, though, is the acreage kind of disappoints. It's a little more than they thought. There's a little more of everything left over than you thought. It's not a fun report for the bulls, generally speaking, but last year was a very good one for the bean bulls. And that's where beans and corn literally went two different directions. You don't see that too often. It's just mostly a disappointing report because people want big changes right away, and that doesn't happen, even in years where it starts growing really fast. USA doesn't move that fast. So here's your revised acres. People are going to argue, well, acres should be less because we did have a very good spring. That doesn't generally show up really quick either. It takes more reports for that stuff to come out as well. So everybody wants these big surprises, and they usually find them on the bear side. This one's leaning kind of mysterious for corn. Like it's hard to know what got in for corn acreage. And then beans, there's a lot of bad categories that could get worse. So beans have their work cut out for them for this to be bullish, but it was really bullish last year. But it's a market mover. It's a fun report. There's a lot of option strategies that you can use going into this. And again, guys are usually pretty busy, so it can be a kind of a quiet time of year, but there is a lot of opportunities usually in this report.
Excellent. Well, anything else to add today, John? Anything we didn't cover?
No, I mean, we're at a time of year where we still don't know what we have. I mean, obviously the USDA's numbers look good. Cattle's getting to be a pivotal time. So I have a feeling we're going to be talking a lot about grains and cattle, and it won't be like the same discussions we've been having for like the last year and a half. It's going to be very different. So we're gonna have big changes in the crop, either for the better or for the worse, over the next 2 weeks. And I think that's what the focus we'll be talking about on is going to be about is how does this look like it's shaping up? And believe it or not, it goes faster than you think it does. And it just all of a sudden it's this little plant that's ankle high, and next thing you know, it's going to be above your head. And summer is almost over, and you're dreading already going into fall. It all happens very fast. Bugs come out like crazy, but tomorrow's off for the grain markets, and I think I'm going to go canoeing. Why not?
Why not? Get out and have some fun away from a computer for a little while. Out of a chair.
Hopefully I don't see a young banjo player or Burt Reynolds around.
Right.
That wouldn't be good.
Right. Yeah. I question your canoeing partner. I hope he survived the trip from that side. But. That's very warranted. I would worry. I am worried every time I go on the boat with him. You make sure he's in the front, I assume, because I could totally see if you're in the front, he's just going to be sitting there taking pictures or something. He'll be doing all the work.
Yeah. Yeah. As a matter of fact, I'm going home to load it and prepare, and he does show up. That's basically what happens.
Yeah.
Yes, that's correct.
It's good to have friends who show up.
Yeah. So outside tomorrow, and then we'll see what happens going into Friday.
It will be an interesting end of the week. I do believe we'll see what happens with the markets. Well, why don't you leave your name and number again, John? And
218-731-1578. Just give me a call anytime.
And you can email us at hedgeheadspod@gmail.com. Thanks, John.
Yep. Bye. It's tough though. It's never easy. Otherwise, I'd be doing a whole bunch of stuff. It's hard to get guys motivated, and then usually when it's time to pull the trigger, it's the opposite of what the news is saying. That's why it's always tough.